Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
There's a lot about doing the work that isn't actually doing the work. Building a piece and being great at it is important. But if you don't know how to market it and see opportunities and chase them down, it's pretty hard. You're just basically talent in the middle of nowhere with no one listening.
Welcome to this episode of the Woodworking Network podcast. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by FDMC Magazine. Today my guest is custom furniture designer and craftsman Matt Buell of M. Buell Studio, and the host of Young Wood Pro contest and education program sponsored by Grizzly Industrial. But first, I want to talk about expanding horizons. Woodworking tends to be somewhat isolated. No matter the size of your operation, fabrication is typically separated from the final destination for the product. Yes, some cabinets and built-ins are largely assembled on site, but the vast majority of wood products are made in the shop or in some kind of manufacturing facility. That's an efficient way to work, but it tends to lend itself to a somewhat insular way of professional life. The focus is on where the work is done and not the larger world. That's particularly true in small shops where just a handful of woodworkers, or maybe even a single pair of hands, is focused on creating the product. In such cases, the intense focus on the work can make the outside world disappear. Such intense focus can be great to do excellent work, but it also can leave you isolated from everything except the process, including outside opportunities and input that could improve your work and your success. When I talk to shop owners, particularly those with small to medium-sized operations, and ask them about attending some conference or trade show, often the answer is, "Oh, we're just too busy to leave the shop." In other words, you are too busy chasing your tail in the shop to see that circumstances outside your shop have changed. You are too busy to learn something new that could alter your processes, gain new customers, or cut production costs. You are too busy to stop to figure out why you are too busy to make more money with less work. In the end, what you are really saying is you're too busy to be successful. Isolated in your plant, you can't possibly discover all the answers to all of your problems. Much of the woodworking industry is focused on custom work, complaining about everything for every job being different each time. But technology has made it possible to streamline customization to focus on similar processes rather than different details. Still, you can't really learn about all those new advances without stepping outside your comfort zone, leaving your shop and learning. Some will say they get all the outside input they need with the internet and some chat group or even an AI bot. But then someone talks about how a chance meeting changed their life. With all of our technology, there is still no substitute for face-to-face contact. Not to mention, if you're spending all of your time in your shop putting out fires, you need to take a breather before you burn out. I live in a rural area that doesn't have nearly the number of businesses, retailers, and institutions of a larger metropolis. But what it does have is a lot of creative people who find solutions through networking with other creative people. They're neighbors, mostly. You need something done? Have a problem to solve? You just ask around. If you stay stuck in your shop, there just aren't enough people to ask around, are there? Before we get to our interview with Matt Buell, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. FDMC Magazine is your vital source of information to improve your woodworking business. Whether it's keeping you apprised of the latest advances in manufacturing, helping improve efficiency with lean manufacturing guru Brad Cairns, or inspiring you with case histories about successful businesses and best practices, FDMC Magazine is there to be the sharpest business tool in your shop. Learn more and subscribe for free at woodworkingnetwork.com/FDMC. Now let's talk with Matt Buell. Today, my guest is Matt Buell of M. Buell Studio and the host of the Young Wood Pro contest and education program sponsored by Grizzly Industrial. Welcome back to the Woodworking Network podcast, Matt.
Glad to be back.
Well, we're recording this interview, we are in the final week of the 2025 Young Wood Pro contest. I understand there are 35 entries so far and more expected in the final days. Could you talk a bit about why young woodworking professionals should enter the contest and participate in this program?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the worst line I've ever heard in my career, but sometimes it has some element of truth to it. It's good exposure. But this, in fact, is, it's getting your work in front of a lot of people. Obviously, there's the prizes. Prizes are good. But it's also,
you got a $2,000 shopping spree at Grizzly.
which is, that's pretty hefty. I mean, that's kudos to Grizzly for really doing that. That's a big one. But also, I think it's just a great dress rehearsal. If you're a young wood pro, there's a lot about doing the work that isn't actually doing the work. Building a piece and being great at it is important. But if you don't know how to market it and see opportunities and chase them down, it's pretty hard. You're just basically talent in the middle of nowhere with no one listening. And so this is a great opportunity to start kind of getting that kind of mental gear moving. So it allows you to kind of look at how you need to be marketing your work. And that's the same thing for an entry here is, you're getting good photos, you're showing the judges what exactly you want them to see, which you're kind of controlling that narrative, which is marketing. So I think there's a lot about the contest that's worth entering. Even if you're not winning, you're still learning.
Oh, yeah, I think it all comes down to networking and exposure. When you're just starting out, it feels a bit lonely out there without any mentors or colleagues to help you on your path. I think that's one of the great things that you've been doing in this program over the last couple of years is sharing that pragmatic advice from somebody who's been there.
And it's really, I'm grateful to be doing it. And a lot of that's out of my own experience, which is when I started out, I had no skills. I had no experience at all using power tools, and I had no one to teach me anything. And so I really had to do it the hard way, and a lot of mistakes, a lot of time, no tutelage. And it was really hard. And so that's one of the main reasons I've always kind of get up for this. It's like, that was rough. I wonder if I can help some people not have to go through all that because I could see where if I wasn't so just gung ho and obsessed with succeeding at it, it would have been really easy to just say, this is just too much. And it's just too hard.
Yeah. It's, I know when I started my first couple of businesses, it was definitely, I had nowhere to turn for advice, and it was definitely making lots of bad mistakes.
Yeah. And when I started, there was no YouTube, woodworking
Right.
stuff. Granted, I don't even know if there's so much now that I'm not going to get into it, but I don't know how much that's even really that helpful or correct, but professionally speaking, but there was nothing. I had the library, I had Fine Woodworking magazine, like FDMC if it was around, but that was a while ago and it was harder to get to. I didn't have a lot of just whatever I could find at the local bookstore or the library. And there were a couple older woodworkers that I was able to eventually get to talk to me, but they were pretty busy. It's like they're making a living. They have time. Some young guy who's, cocky and walking in there basically saying he's going
And
to
potential competition
yeah,
too.
like, hey, help me get really good so I can take food off your plate. Like, good Lord, Fortunately, they're both really good human beings, and one of them is still now just a really close friend.
That's great. Well, another great networking opportunity coming up is the Wood Pro Expo and Closets Conference that's set for West Palm Beach in June. I know you're scheduled as a speaker, as am I. What will you be talking about?
I'll be just doing kind of a general sweep, like best practices in woodworking, like from running a business standpoint. And, to me, I've been doing this for about 14, 15 years, somewhere in there. I'm losing count. The gray in my beard is showing mentally. But a lot of the stuff that I'll be covering to me seems really simple. And I had a nice reminder lately. I've got a guy working with me and, I jump in and I knock stuff out and I'm just doing it. It's just natural fluid motion. He was sitting there watching me the day, and I thought like my fly was unzipped or something. Like he was just staring. And I go, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Man, you make it look so easy." And I'm like, "Well, this is common sense stuff." But to a
Well,
new
it's
person,
common sense that's been born and bred from years of experience.
exactly. So best practices, I'll be covering just a lot of just simple thinking and ways to approach running a woodworking business that I think a lot of people don't really get to in those early years, that you kind of just overlook, but also some just common stuff that I think is common, but once again, to a new person, it's like, I didn't know that.
Well, I
So
know there's a lot of things too that um, the smaller shops don't realize they can learn from the bigger operations as far as organization and streamlining processes and things and little things, like uh, I know you're real big on keeping your shop clean and organized and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of the people that are in small shops, particularly one person operations, things kind of get out of hand because they know where everything is. It's in that pile over there or whatever. But that's not a good way to operate.
no, no, and clean is efficient, clean is safe. My thinking, mental space is better when my shop is clean. It's just, it works. And those are notes I took from visiting woodworkers when I first started out. And the guys whose shops were clean, boy, they were always busy. And I don't know if the correlation is causal, but the guys whose shops were pretty messy seem to be struggling more. And I just kind of took that note, went, okay, that's a thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, and if you ever have customers that, visit your shop, it's really impressive to a customer if the shop is obviously organized. They don't have to understand anything about woodworking, but if they see that your whole process is very organized, they're going to be impressed.
It sets the tone. It's called professionalism. I mean, really. It's kind of like, would you have someone visit your office for a business chat and leave the place a mess? No. It's the same thing.
It still amazes me that more shops don't participate in trade shows and conferences. They seem to not want to leave the shop. Some of them they tell me, "Oh, I'm too busy." What are they missing by staying home?
Hmm. I'm one of those guys, or was, that I'm too busy. Matter of fact, the first trade show I ever went to was IWF. You guys had to give me a national award to get me out of the shop. But after experiencing that, I realized there's a lot of connections you can make. And no matter how technologically advanced we get, you really just can't replace a relationship that starts with a good conversation and a handshake, especially regarding companies and vendors that I use, and establishing those relationships. Like when a tool goes down or I have something break or I need a part, I'm calling somebody that I know personally, and I'm meeting them at these conferences. And so it's, hey, how are your kids? How's your family? Hey, I need some help with something. And it's just the help happens way faster as opposed to just being some random guy and who knows where calling saying, hey, I need a part.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big one. But also, one of the things I love is getting to meet other woodworkers and just listening, and learning, because that we all have experiences and perspectives and stuff. And I can always learn something, even if it's from the new guys starting out or from the guys who are doing it 40 years. Everyone has something they've learned that I haven't experienced. And it's really nice to be around that and kind of feel a sense of community in a profession that is quite isolating. My shop's over 3,000 feet, and I don't even have a window.
Yeah.
That was intentional, by the way. It's like Vegas in here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it still is amazing how many folks don't see that value. When you attend a trade show or a conference on your own, what are you looking to get out of it? How do you approach it?
It really depends on the year and what I'm in the middle of. And it changes. But I would say, especially early on when I started trying or started attending, um, I would look at my work and look at, is there any place in my process where I'm having a hard time or I'd like to see something improved? And then I would do a little research on the internet and see if there are any machines or products that meet that need. And if I couldn't find anything, it would be on a little list I would take with me to the show something to just keep an eye open for. And then I always make another sub list of like small products that make big differences. And I've found little things like that at shows too that made a huge difference in my workflow. Even like a $10 brush, um, because you can run into some pretty cool stuff at these things that you wouldn't have seen any other way.
Oh, the
But also,
serendipitous value is amazing, I think. I have found, you know, things as small and as simple as a different kind of fastener.
yeah, I mean, there's some really cool people out there coming up with some great ideas, and you just never know when you're going to run into just a random booth and go, oh, that's fantastic. Like this solves a big problem for me. How much is it? $15. You're kidding. Like, and I would have never known. So I think that's a big one. Also, though, I just try and be open. A lot of times I just kind of show up with an open mind and I go look around and I talk to anybody who wants to talk and I listen and just kind of roll with it. Just be open to experience and meeting new people.
What are the special benefits of attending smaller regional shows like WoodPro Expo compared to the giant shows in Atlanta or Vegas? I think some of those shows can be a little overwhelming.
They are. One, the audience that you're attending with is experiencing less fatigue, so their social aptitude is higher. So your ability to sit down and actually get a chance to talk with somebody is better. Um, it's a more personal show. The vendors aren't as overwhelmed with numbers. I'm not saying numbers and quality are the same, but just the attendance, it's not as huge of a draw, in the convention center in Las Vegas, right? And so even though it can be very busy, it's a lot easier to get that ratio with the vendor if you have questions about a product. It's also just a lot easier to run into people because it's smaller. I mean, I've been to big conferences where I have friends there, and I was there 3 or 4 days, and I didn't even see them.
Right.
It's just so big. Or I've got to cross 4 halls, which feels like I've walked 2 mountains just to say hi. So the smaller ones, it's a more personal feel. I feel like you can get a lot accomplished in a much more present way. I
Well,
know I'm
and
available at those shows to talk to people.
oh, absolutely. I love talking with folks at the shows, I think there's a lot of good conversation that goes on. You also seem to, I think you have more ready access to conference and educational programs at the smaller shows because there's time. If you've got this big long list and a massive giant show to cover, you're maybe not going to allot as much time as you might for some of the conferences. And at WoodPro Expo and the Closets Conference, most of the talks, I mean, there are talks all the way through the event, but most of the talks are the day before things start happening on the expo floor, and makes it a lot easier. So.
And that's another thing I should have added earlier. One of the things that in the last few years that I am more interested in when I'm attending, because I've seen a lot of machines, I've been doing this for a minute now, is the educational side. Like I've really enjoyed sitting in and listening to a lot of my peers speak, even on the design end, because I do a lot of design work. Sitting and listening to other designers talk about their experiences and their perspectives and even their style, been really cool. The educational aspect of these conferences, especially the smaller ones, is fantastic.
Well, in this show, there's opportunities, like say if you're a guy that's building cabinets right now, but you're not doing closets, there's going to be a lot of information about closets, which you may find is highly profitable to add to your mix and can expand what you do at a place. Even if you're a furniture maker, learning about other products that you might add to your mix so that you can sell more than just furniture to somebody. Those are things that can add value to what you're doing. And there's going to be information. I'm going to be talking about pricing. Paul Mansell will be talking about pricing and some business efficiencies. All those things are available at the show, and some of us are closer to the end of our careers than others, but even the younger folks should be talking about What are they going to do uh, when they decide to quit the business? What's the exit strategy? Is there something better than just closing the doors and calling an auction house? And that's going to be there too. So there's all sorts of opportunities. Do you have any special tactics for getting the most out of a conference or a trade show?
I have one of my greatest character defects, but also assets, is that I'm kind of a little bit of a Captain Kirk. And so I've been known to I just kind of show up and it's just like, let's shoot from the hip. Let's see what happens. I've had to get a little bit better about having, like organization and approaching conferences. And I usually just kind of roll in. I have a little bit of an agenda. A good plan is not a bad thing, but like Mike Tyson says, right? Everyone's got one till you get punched in the face, right? So I try and be flexible, and usually I can get through the checklist that I have of things I need to attend to or look for, or conferences I want to pop into, or education seminars I want to pop into. But all in all, I just try to show up and be really open to people, because that's the bulk of where my experience or anything I learn comes from. And by the way, I don't ever want to hear you talk about me at the end of your career. That's depressing. Please don't do that.
Well, sort of want to just keep on working and working. So,
Good. Please. I can't. I don't want to. I don't want a woodworking world with that Will Sampson doing something.
Oh yeah. Well, it's a lot of fun, and I get a lot of positive feedback and great energy out of helping people do things in their business that perhaps they never imagined they could do. I'm early on, one of the very first pricing talks that I gave, a gentleman, it was in Hartford, Connecticut, and a gentleman attended that who, if we were really honest, he had no excuse for being in business other than the fact that his wife had a better job and had insurance.
I mean, all right, that's fair.
But he met some people and he learned some things about what he was doing and wasn't doing in his business, and he grew that business to be profitable enough that he had 15 employees all earning family wage money, and his wife was his business manager, and his oldest son became his engineer, and he owned his real estate in not a cheap area north of Boston. And that's a big change from a starving artist in a one-man operation.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, your pricing educational talk is one of my favorites. I remember. Sorry, I just had someone pop in. But I remember going to it recently, and I've been doing this for a long time. I mean, long time, over a decade, and I still learn stuff. I was like, oh, that's really good. Like that's one of the most helpful ones I've attended. And I'm not saying that because I'm talking to you. Like I'm honestly saying that.
Well, thank you. I enjoy doing it. I sort of joke that it's business 1A for people that never had it. And that's unfortunately the truth of our industry is people get into this because they like making stuff, not necessarily because they wanted to make a bunch of money. And then they start making stuff and they realize they have a business and they have to figure out, how do I sustain this business? And, how do I support my family? And how do I support my own needs? And I think that's been a lot of the great stuff you've been talking about in this Young Wood Pro program, of the kinds of nuts and bolts, pragmatic kinds of issues that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis as not just a woodworker, but a woodworking entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, I think the number one thing is recognizing that, my woodworking heart and my business mind are not always in agreement. And the first step to, I think, getting in the right lane, so to speak, and running a business is just actualizing that problem exists. That sometimes the right choice isn't going to be the one my woodworking passionate part of me likes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, attending events like Wood Pro Expo and the Closets Conference and all can help you look in the mirror a little bit because you're seeing other people at the show. And, you know, if you see somebody that is uh, more prosperous than you can maybe learn a few things. You can also reinforce your good decisions when you meet somebody who's not as prosperous as you, and maybe you can help them out.
Yeah.
And it's not a situation where you're dealing with, you know, next door competitors mostly.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's humbling in the best of ways, I think. That's one of the best things about getting out and attending conferences is that community. You know, you really kind of it gets validated. It's like, you know what? I'm not better than anybody, but I'm no one's better than me either. But we all have something we can learn from each other. I mean, I've been very humbled. I sat on a panel a couple of years in Vegas, and one of the guys sitting to my left, he had like 20 or 30 employees, and he was going through all the stuff they're doing, and I'm just going, like, wow, he's impressive. Like I felt this big next to him, you know. I sat there and I was like, well, I want to talk to this guy. I want to learn something from him. He's doing something great, and he was a killer guy. We sat and talked for probably a good 20 minutes afterwards. But
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of times where someone wants to talk to me, so I try and make that time because I think it's a collective thing.
Yeah, well, and I think too that in the, you know, mainstream media and things like that, there are a lot of suppositions that get tossed around, like that manufacturing is dead in this country, and that you know you can't make a living making custom furniture, or you know those kinds of things get bandied about as truth, and they aren't at all. And uh, so going to a trade show gives you an opportunity to see reality and learn that some of the obstacles are not necessarily as big as you think they are.
No, they're not. And I can tell you firsthand, I started when I started out, this was before kind of the maker movement and woodworking kind of got a little popularity, especially on social media. I was about 3 years, 4 years ahead of that. And when I told most people I was starting a woodworking business, they all looked at me like, what? Like, that's not a job. like, like you're gonna be a furniture maker? Like, that's not a viable job. And I listened. I said, okay, well, that's cool. But I learned years ago, smile, nod, and agree, and then go do what you gotta do anyway. Like, it doesn't matter. Like it's me taking the risk and it's all my responsibility. So I'm gonna go do it. And nowadays I'm without sounding arrogant, some days I want to look around and be like, home run, is that good?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it became popular too. And about 3 or 4 years after I got started up, I'm like, wow, this isn't a viable thing. Why is everybody trying to do this now?
Because there's all these influencers on YouTube.
Oh, okay. That's a very gray thing without me getting into my
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, trying to sift the wheat from the chaff,
it is
and
hard.
I think that what you said earlier about being able to meet face to face with people, uh, I think that's really important, and it's a lot easier to ascertain the truth and what's good and what isn't when they're right in front of you, and it's not filtered through some highly edited YouTube video.
I go back and forth with it. I love that there's something out there and that people are interested and there's something to feed that interest. That for the whole is good. And I kind of got that perspective from you years ago. It was something you had kind of touched on. I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe Will's got a point that my dislike of this is an old idea that I've got wrong, which usually I get to be happy once I realize that's the case.
But you're still not going to buy a CNC machine.
No, oh, I'm not. That's a um, but I will say the influencer thing is for woodworking is it is tricky because I think we're going to get to a place where we've really got to start looking at what we value. And my follower count doesn't always denote my talent or what I contribute. And
Or
that's,
necessarily your income either.
yeah. I mean, and the truth is, I respect it. Doing social media at that level is a lot of work. Like, that's why I don't. I win. How can I do that? I'm too busy building furniture, you know? It's so I respect it. But I also, because I understand the kind of work that goes into building furniture for a living, it's just kind of I raise my eyebrow a lot, and not out of mean judgment, just kind of like, like, I don't know. I've never seen any chairs come out of that place. Do they build furniture?
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I tell clients, I'm like, hey, if you're looking for a furniture maker, be my guest. If I'm you, I'm going to look at their portfolio. If there's no chairs, I'd be curious as to.
Chairs are hard.
They're hard, but to a professional, it's like, yeah, it's a chair.
Yeah.
I love chairs.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you face to face in Florida, June 11th through 13th at Wood Pro Expo and Closets Conference. And, it's going to be fun and uh, meeting new people and learning new things.
Yeah, I look
So
forward to it. I really do.
sounds great. Well, always good talking to you, Matt, and we'll see you in June.
Likewise, Will. Honor to be with you.
Take care.
You too.
That's it for today. If you are looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, FDMC Magazine. If you want to learn more about the Wood Pro Expo, go to woodproexpoflorida.com. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.